I think it's about time we talk about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, because boy, it has been a long time coming. From the pre-release hype, from the trailers, gameplay showcases, and interviews to the initial game's release, this game really had a lot of hype and high expectations that were just set in stone for the Sparking series, since technically speaking, this game is both a reboot and a sequel to a very beloved series that hasn't got an installment in over 17 years.
Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
With all that build up and anticipation, you would have thought that this will be a game worth waiting for, right?
This game is fucking ass.
Ooh, yeah.
It's time to take a deep dive into the emotional roller coaster that is Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. This is essentially the final episode for the retrospective series that I've been holding for the mainline Tenkaichi games. So let's settle this off with a bang, shall we? Alright, let's go back to the past for a bit. Say about March 5th for 2023. This was the day when we got the teaser for the new Budokai Tenkaichi game. This was revealed during the Dragon Ball 2023 Battle Hour. When me and my friends saw this reveal, we got hit with the meanest stun lock. I mean, this is the game that we grew up with as kids. And despite it being such a short teaser trailer, you know, when I looked at this art style, I thought this was like, damn, this reminded me of Fighters or just like the modern era art system works art style that you see in their games. And it may have sounded silly at the time, now that I think about it, but we didn't know who was developing this game, because visually, this did not look like a Spike Chunsoft game. This aesthetic seems more akin to something like a CC2 or Arc System Works. And then as the months went by, turned out, okay, Spike Chunsoft is working on it.
Oh dear God! Oh good God!
For those who aren't aware about Spike Chunsoft, they are known for making some notable RPGs, visual novels, but they also got some fighting games in their lineup. These two games right here, Jump Force and One Punch Man, the game that should never exist, immediately raised the eyebrow for me, because these were the last two fighting games that they've made, and both of these games are not good arena fighters. These two titles in particular pushed a very bad outlook among the arena fighter space. So with that into consideration, I immediately started to become skeptical about the game.
Now there was gameplay showcases and news articles discussing the direction that they wanted to go with Sparking Zero, with new director Tairi Kikuchi, who was also the battle director for J-Star's Victory Versus. He stated that Sparking Zero isn't just a new game, but it is a sequel to the Sparking series, even though the name sounds like a reboot, but they're just scared of the number 4 because it means bad luck in Japan. The goal is to keep the series' core mechanics while adjusting some old mechanics and adding new features to entice players. One of the biggest goals they wanted to improve from BT3 is to push the boundaries of emulating the immersion of Dragon Ball fights the best they can. The game was also designed with the Dragon Ball experience coming first, and the primary focus on the casual experience, rather than the competitive side. However, there are systems like the DP battle that prevents players from using multiple strong characters in a team, like Gogeta Super Saiyan 4 and Kid Buu, for example. All these points gave me the idea that they want to go all out on giving both new and old fans of the Sparking series that same joy we had growing up. This also puts a lot of pressure and high expectations on both Bandai and Spike's part, since they are marketing this game as Tenkaichi 4 instead of a reboot.
Fast forward to the 19th of 2024, I got the chance to play a demo of Sparking Zero at EVO 2024, one of the biggest fighting game majors out there. I got a chance to play a couple of sessions, and my initial impressions were that visually, you know, this game looked great. I noticed the combat felt similar to Tenkaichi for the most part, excluding some move properties that changed drastically compared to Tenkaichi 3, but the most noticeable change for me that I noticed was the movement. It felt a lot slower compared to Tenkaichi 3, and that regular dashing just cost meter. This was the new short dash mechanic that they introduced, and it was definitely a change. That and the camera was dog water, but I'll be pretty honest, I did not like what I was playing, but I wanted to just save my opinions and concerns to the game release, because at the time, if you say anything about the game, you were just gonna get slandered or harassed about it, or even considered a hater about it. And I didn't want to deal with that backlash. I just wanted to just save all the opinions and criticisms until the game came out. October 11th, 2024, or October 7th if you were like the many others that either bought the deluxe or ultimate edition of the game. Sparking Zero came out, and the initial impressions for this game were very high. In fact, this was technically the highest Metacritic score out of all the mainline games. It was got over 182 playable characters that come from all eras of Dragon Ball Z, GT, and the movies. And for the first time in the series, we got Dragon Ball Super characters in the series, and it had more playable characters to play compared to Tenkaichi 3, which was 161 characters. So this was the biggest roster in the series. And to answer your question, yes, One Arm Gohan is back. This is what we've been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. We got new controller types and accessibility options that were designed before new and old players alike. We got new and reworked system mechanics for better or worse. We'll talk about that later. And we got 12 stages. They are really on the bigger scale. Yeah, there are a lot less stages this time around. This game technically has more stages than Tenkaichi 1. You got a new story mode that focuses on different character perspectives that go from Z to Super with some original what-if scenarios. You have custom battles where you can play both in-game and user-created battles that have different win conditions and situations, along with being able to just create your own battles, which was sick. You have a new challenge and mission mode that keeps up with your milestones and progressions in-game. And we also got returning modes such as offline battles, battle training, replays, customization, tournament mode, Shenron summons, online battles, and we even got the encyclopedia mode. The way things were looking right now, this seemed like a dream come true with a well-packaged product for a long-anticipated sequel that a lot of people been waiting for. And it was during the honeymoon phase of the game, but as time went by, I realized that this game took some steps forward and a lot of steps back. Damn, this game looks pretty. I guess this is just an obvious factor when it comes to the Tenkaichi games. They always nailed the cel-shaded anime art style look, even during the PS2 era, but with Sparking Zero, they just went further beyond. Mind you, they had to build all these assets from the ground up with Unreal Engine 5, and it just nails the art style from 0 to 100. It's almost like they took notes and tried to mimic what Fighters and Kakarot did when it comes to mirroring the anime and manga, and they did it just as good as those games, and it looks amazing. Even just taking that aside, like from the transformations, the impact clashes, performing special moves, and just the level of the structure and detail when it comes to breaking the stage and just throwing out moves in general. It's even just the minuscule details that genuinely stand out with this game. Just to throw an example out there, like whenever a character is charging their ki, you will see the ground crumble, you will see the clouds rupturing, and then you will even see like the debris levitating at your charging. That is just sick to me. The art direction and the graphics are superb in motion when you get to the gameplay side of things, in terms of the cutscenes and certain aspects of the game from a presentation standpoint. That we'll get there. Now, in terms of fan service, oh man, yeah, if you're a Dragon Ball fan, ooh, yeah, you're gonna enjoy this. For me at least, the unique character interactions and dialogue from both the intros and the character select when you're choosing characters specifically for like team battles and stuff, that small little detail and those fun little Easter eggs, those are great. And they just put a smile on my face. They even got character specific throws and ultimate finish interactions. For me, was a new thing to the Sparking series, which I absolutely love. Now, new game, new era, a lot of games are going for a more minimalistic aesthetic for a lot of the menus. And the same goes for Sparking Zero in some aspects. I do enjoy this CC2 like menu system. That aspect is cool. Even taking that aside, font layout, the borders, and just some of the menus seem kind of dry for a Dragon Ball game to me. You can have a minimalistic approach and have style, but it's like the way Sparking does it when it comes to certain menus, it just looks very generic. Now, as for the music, let me tell you something about the music for this game. They essentially got an all-star team when it comes to composing the soundtrack for Sparking Zero. You got the composer from both Tenkaichi 2, Tenkaichi 3, and you have the orchestrator behind Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Relink. And you also have the composer behind Bayonetta 3. Now, with that lineup, you would expect the soundtrack to go hard. And in some cases, it does. But I will be completely honest. The soundtrack for this game isn't as memorable as the other games. There are moments where it hit. And I would even say that there's a lot more variety in terms of the different genres that they mix into: orchestrated, rock, metal, and even electronica. And the variety is definitely there, but the songs just don't hit as hard. Now, there are some honorable mentions like Innocent of Soul, Hidden Potential, Beyond Good and Evil, Counterattack, Lone Wolf, and even Malicious Intent. Those are my personal favorites, but in all honesty, like, I like at most 12 songs out of the like 70 plus that are in the game. But if you're not a fan of the original music for the game, you always have the option to buy the anime pack music. Now, as for the sound design, I'm gonna be a little nitpicky on this one too. It's not as satisfying, as snappy as it should be to me. Like, whenever I punch somebody in Sparking Zero, I feel like I'm hitting them with a wet noodle. For instance, if I throw a heavy crush in Tenkaichi 3, I'm caving their stomach cavity in. I am breaking the sound barrier as I'm punching them, and that feels good. When I gump punch somebody in Sparking Zero, I feel like it's just a slap on the wrist. The impact isn't the same. Even when it comes to like the beam struggles and just clashes, it just doesn't feel as strong as it should be to me. Like, the impact is just not there. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the gameplay for Sparking Zero, because boy, do things get dicey. I'm going to be talking mostly about the game from vanilla release up to the current patch of the game in terms of its mechanics, and also how different it is going from Tenkaichi 3 to Sparking Zero. This game has two control types, standard and classic. The standard controls are the ones that the game wants you to start off with. It's accessible, it's fresh to people who are new to the series. For the OGs out there, the one-to-one with the previous Tenkaichi games. Now, you may think to yourself, do both of these control schemes have their benefits and drawbacks? It's all preference, and unfortunately, the one is clearly better than the other. Standard has a few benefits compared to classic. Some of them being that, for one, if you're playing team battles, switching characters is a lot easier doing it on standard controls versus classic, because whenever you use classic, you have to use the analog sticks, which are a bit more precise compared to just using the D-pad. Same with grabs. Grabs come out faster when you are playing in standard. In classic, you have to step, then throw the grab. A huge factor that I didn't even take into consideration is movement, specifically dragon dashing up or down or ascend and descend. It's a lot faster and instantaneous on standard controls versus how they are in classic. That's like a split second difference to me. I just feel like if you just play on classic, you're pretty much nerfing yourself a little bit. And we got some good quality of life changes and accessibility in terms of the control layout. The biggest thing is that you can customize your button configurations, your face buttons, all that. So say for example, the Clash mini games. We all know back then you had to spin your analog stick. You know, we can't be doing that no more with these expensive ass controllers. Well, guess what? You can switch them to where you can use the standard ones where you can just, you know, press the face buttons, and that's really good. In addition to that, there are also accessibility options for little Timmy who, if he just want to play for the game for fun and just have a good time, well, guess what? You can turn combo assist, auto guarding, auto recovery, and auto movement on. Now, it's not a game breaking feature or nothing that's like super broken. I think all these options make it easier for those who want to pick up the game and just have a good time regardless of what era of Dragon Ball games they come from. As for the core mechanic changes from Tenkaichi 3 to Sparking Zero, oh wow, you thought the jump between Tenkaichi 1 to Tenkaichi 2 was drastic? The jump from Tenkaichi 3 to Sparking Zero is staggering. Now, to say this is a sequel is kind of a huge stretch. If anything, this seems more so like a reset to the series. It's like Spike Chunsoft used Tenkaichi 3 as a template and just said, fuck it, we're just gonna do it our way. This is the first game in the mainline Tenkaichi series that is in 60 FPS rather than 25 to 30. So the game is gonna naturally feel a lot more responsive and faster. It also means the window for like the precise mechanics such as like super counters and advantages have a much bigger window compared to Tenkaichi 3. The stepping barrier in general in Sparking Zero feels much stronger and has a bigger focus, while the movement barrier, to me at least, has got toned down drastically, meaning that a lot of movement options that you were able to do back in Tenkaichi 2 and Tenkaichi 3 have either been removed or feel worse. My guess is that they did it just so that fights can be more engaging up close. The back damage multiplier is no longer existent, meaning that you do not take double damage from getting hit on your backside. Regular dashing now costs meter, with the new short dash mechanic, to where now any dash that's outside of a dragon dash cost meter, which emphasizes key meter management. Damage has increased across the board. My god, this game is significantly more volatile compared to Tenkaichi 3. Key blasts in general have gotten an insane buff. They are a lot more exploitable than before. Side steps and back steps during rush attacks have received a massive buff to where now they feel a lot better to use than before. You can now step in up to 3 times during a rush attack, during rush combos. Supers no longer have cooldowns. Yeah, I'm serious. Supers do not have any cooldowns, which means you can land to up to 2 supers at once with one character if you really wanted to. The rate in which you get skill counts or stocks is a lot faster than before. Whenever you're getting hit, deflecting key blasts, or going through the Vanish Wars, you get a massive amount of skill counts now. Physical rush supers now hit you regardless whether you are in a knockdown state or not. Supers and ultimates in this game in general have much better tracking and are a lot faster than before. All the properties for rush techniques and follows have been changed or reworked. Melee momentum isn't as effective as it used to be, and blast key combos during sparking or max power have been removed. And those are just the surface level changes. Now, for your movement options, you still have the same options that you had in Tenkaichi 3 in terms of having your dragon dashes, your burst dashes, your quick ascents, descents, but overall movement just feels much slower and feel more clunky. It's just a very awkward feeling. Even for Tenkaichi 3 to be 25 to 30 FPS, somehow that game feels faster in terms of movement, which is really odd to say. It's a weird change that, hell, even to this day I'm not okay with, but I just tolerate it and just adapted to it. Now, when it comes to the offense, most of your rush techniques and follow-ups do make a return. However, there are some property changes. For example, Key Eye Cannon and Key Wave are no longer unblockable during level 1 charges. When you maximize the charge, they become unblockable. And Heavy Crushers are, for some reason, no longer punishable on block. Do I know why? Ask the devs. I don't know why they made that change, but hey, more power to you. little strikes and sweeps do make a return, but I will say this, during the vanilla release of the game, sweeps did not have cooldowns. Now mind you, you can vanish out of it, and it is one of the best reset options that you can do in the game. Some characters now have meterless command grabs. Yup, that's a thing. Now they show you a little indicator when it's coming, so you still have time to like move or sidestep or even punish it on reaction, and you can do guaranteed setups. Chase changes also got a little tweak, since now you can now do follow-ups whenever you're tagging in the character doing a rush attack or a knockdown. Another new addition to this game is that they added Vanish Assault. It's a new way of getting the offense going whenever you are closer to your opponent. Now, depending on what range you are, whether if you're far, mid, or close range, your Vanish Assault may vary. You use it to create distance from your opponent, use it as a combo starter, or using it as a fake out or feint option to confuse your opponent. Now, with this tool, you are also able to steal your turns back. You are plus, and you are at an advantageous state. It does require a little meter, but the tool itself is very versatile, and I thought it was honestly one of the best changes that they added to the game. Now, impact mini games also make a return, so the beam clashes, even the dash clashes make a return, but now we have step in clashes and grab clashes, and they all have their own unique mini game to learn and understand. But this time around, you are able to gamble your key to boost your chances on winning. You heard that right. Boost now takes away meter. This goes for supers and this goes for clashes. The Z counter mechanic is back. If you guys don't already know, I never liked this mechanic in Tenkaichi 3. They brought it back again in Sparking Zero. In fact, they made it worse during release. And let me tell you why. You see, pre-patch Sparking Zero, when it comes to Vanish Wars, they cost way less meter, significantly less. In Tenkaichi, when you vanish, it costs 1 bar key during the interaction. And the rhythm is the same. Yes, you know, it used to speed up back in Tenkaichi 3. But for some reason, they just forgot to add it. And it is such a drag. And I don't know why they did it. And also, as you're vanishing during this war, you gain a tremendous amount of skill count, and you can use that skill count for revenge counters, super perception, and your passive skills. All the defensive mechanics from Tenkaichi 3 make a return with just a few tweaks. Starting with the mechanic I'm sure everyone else knows about, and that is perception. They decreased the recovery of throwing out perception, and it also costs way less meter than it did before. I don't know why they made that change, but it gets worse. Now we have super perception, which costs 1 skill count. In other words, if anyone throws a smash attack at you while you're throwing perception, they can just straight up deflect and counter the attack back. You can use super perception for beam deflects and to counter against revenge counters. Now mind you, there's multiple ways of countering perception in general. And trust, they made it easier as time went on, which I will go into more detail later. Doesn't mean it's not a new one to deal with. Then we got revenge counter, but instead of costing health, now it just costs 2 skill counts, which can only be activated when you're getting hit in front of the opponent, not behind. Pre-patch, this tool sucked, and it didn't help that it was the slowest reversal tool compared to every other defensive tool in your arsenal. And for some odd, strange, terrible reason, the tech windows for grabs are so easy. It's almost the equivalent of taking candy from a baby. Y'all thought grabs in Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising was easy enough? Oh no. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what Sparking Zero does. Regardless if you with any buttons, with any super, go into a transformation or passive, regardless of how much in recovery you have to any move that you do, you can tech out of grabs anytime. Who in their right mind thought that it was okay? And we still gotta talk about super counter. I always thought that mechanic was cool. It gave you the most reward and it was satisfying to do. They were hard as hell in Tenkaichi 3. In Sparking Zero, they made it a lot easier. Now, when you make super counters more accessible across the board, while also not having cooldowns, which promotes people to mash their super counters when they're not hitting the time correctly, which results in you not being able to hit any confirms or combos off. Hell, even though I get Tenkaichi was never a super combo intensive game, is mostly a game of resets once you get to a certain level, trying to get any string, let alone getting your pressure started, gets invalidated so quick. The last thing I want to talk about is the passive skills. I'm aware that max power, instant max power, explosive wave, wild sense, instant transmission, and many other passives have always been in the game. I have no issue with that. That is perfectly fine. However, the major difference between Tenkaichi 3 and Sparking Zero with their passive skills is that there are certain core passive skills that are really strong that used to have repercussions when you use them. They no longer have those flaws anymore. And you guys already know what I'm going to talk about. That is Instant Spark and that is After Image Strike. What made After Image Strike and Instant Spark so good in Sparking Zero is that key sickness was not a thing. You see, back in Tenkaichi 3, whenever you throw certain passives, they give you debuffs that make either charging your key a lot slower or dashing in general feel worse. That's not a thing in this game. The way characters gain skill counts so fast in this game, you will be seeing that all the time with a lot of characters, and that's what ran the game.
The more and more I played the vanilla version of the game, I was just like, this really isn't Tenkaichi. Like, the way the game played, it just seems like everything was just going backwards. The movement was nerfed compared to previous games. You couldn't really move in the step-in barrier like how you were able to previously. Instant Spark and characters who could just key blast you non-stop were basically carrying the game, especially Super Saiyan 2 Kefla. With the way her ultimate was, there was really no way out of the situations. People just spamming perception non-stop, even though there's ways to deal with it, it was still annoying to deal with, especially if they're playing UI Goku or Whis. Revenge counter essentially being a useless mechanic at the time. The game had unresponsive controls if you were playing on classic controls, to where you weren't able to transform. In DP battle, you weren't able to switch out, you weren't able to use your supers, and even had problem with standard controls as well, which that even shouldn't happen for any game to even begin with. Then you had the things with the Giants, to where they did so much damage in DP battle when you switched into the character, and also when they go into Instant Spark, they had the shoulder charges, as I like to call it, to where they could just keep doing the shoulder charge over and over again. When you have the enemy back turn, and if your character has a key blast loop and they didn't have explosive wave, there was absolutely no counterplay to it. C counter in this game compared to BT3 on release, it was just awful. It was just so boring, because after like the first few times you did it, you honestly just got the muscle memory down and anybody can do it. And same way with the super counters as well. Anybody can just do it because you could just match the input, and it just made the gameplay overall just like, I'm not really feeling it, honestly. Overall on release, the game just had so many problems that it was kind of just like, it really didn't even feel like a proper Tenkaichi game for me. And after a while, it got to the point I really had to make a 40-minute video criticizing the game and talk about the issues that I personally had with the game. That's how deep and serious this shit got.
And on a surface level, yes, it does emulate the feeling of being a Dragon Ball character, which is good. That's what they said they wanted to do, and they did just that. But in terms of design and how the game functions, it was terrible. With all those issues and problems, we eventually got our first patch in late October.
The first patch for Sparking Zero, it honestly wasn't really anything too crazy. I just call it patch light, to be honest. They mostly just fixed up Yajirobe to where instead of him having Setsu being at 5 skill counts, he has it at 6, and he lost a little bit of health. But the main problem of the game was, in general, it's just that you gained skill count way too fast, that Yajirobe was still able to do the Sensu Bean even where he's at now. Now he's just a little bit more better to deal with, but a good Yajirobe player can still do the same thing he was doing before the first patch, honestly. Also, they fixed the unresponsiveness of controls, because for the classic control type, they were having issues to where they couldn't transform, they couldn't switch into characters, they couldn't do supers, and even standard controls were having issues as well. And it's just like, bro, just not being able to play the game as you intended because of the game's fault and not because of the player's fault, it already rubbed so many players off the wrong way to where even before the first patch even came out, a lot of people already wanted to stop playing the game by that point.
The second patch that released during the third week of December, one of the first major patches that we got for Sparking Zero, and it was a good start. And these changes alone made the game a much more tolerable game to play and improve a lot of aspects that I disliked about Sparking Zero.
So for the second patch of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, this was around the time that I was introduced to R Creeps, and he invited me to join the master document to where other BT2, BT3 and content creators for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero joined together to give a huge feedback form of everything we would love to see changed and send it to the devs, so that way the devs can see what they can actually be changed about the game. And I remember when the document was first put out by us, and we honestly got a lot of great feedback, and even though some people didn't agree with everything we said, a lot of people agree with what majority of what we said about the game. And funny enough, the second patch honestly fixed a lot of problems that we talked about in that document. The giant shoulder charge, you can basically block it now, so it's no longer really an issue. The lock-on now doesn't take forever to find an enemy to where when they instant transmission, or if you get hit with an ultimate, it's no longer really an issue. The Z counter change now sped up the Z counter, so now it's not as boring to play and actually look at. It is actually a lot more fun to be in them now, honestly. Characters who got buffs, now their skill count got decreased by 1, so most of the buffs that characters got now cost 2 skill counts now. Now when people insta-spark and they try to Ki Blast spam you, now you can actually move while deflecting Ki Blast, so now that's not really an issue anymore. Also, while you're in sparking, the combo scaling that you used to have previously before the second patch, it used to be ridiculous, so now it actually scales now, so it does less damage now. Android 19 to 20, who basically took over DP battles around this time because they had dragon dashes to where they didn't lose ki. Now they actually lose ki now, and I know the whole community rejoiced about that one, man. They also changed the speed of supers and ultimates, so characters who used to have unreactable ones like Super Saiyan Gotenks Galactic Donuts and Z Broly's ultimate, those were changed, so now it's actually a lot more reactable now, and you can actually vanish them easier now, which lessens. And when you got your opponent back turn previous patch, you were able to just Ki Blast loop them over and over again. They also changed that to where you couldn't really do that anymore. And there was more things that were in that patch, but this patch was honestly a huge step in the right direction, and it honestly goes to show that the devs were actually listening and trying to make the game better for everyone in the community, whether you were a casual or a competitive player. And it was honestly just a really great feeling to be able to see all this stuff, man.
And we got another patch 1 month later, and this was easily one of the best patches that they made in the game.
Now, the current patch that we have for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is easily to be the best patch we've ever gotten for this game. And it's honestly going to be the main reason that I play the game a lot more now than what I used to. Super counter, something I thought they wouldn't change at all. They changed it to where it's like BT3 now, to where if you misinput the super counter, it resets and then you have to time it again. And now people are getting more and more combos now, because before super counter you were just able to match the input. Now you can't really do that as frequently as you used to anymore, and that is overall blessings. They also changed perception too, to where like perception now takes more ki when you're doing it, and if you try to spam it, it has a slight recovery. I do wish they added more recovery to it, but I'm very happy to see that they're actually trying to fix that and change that. Super Saiyan 4 Goku is the best character he's ever been, especially with this patch, because he also got something in the second patch to where like he got a buff to like he has like more damage or something, if I remember correctly. But in this patch they basically gave him the buffs, and on top of that now he's a full power charge character, which is actually bonkers. That junk is crazy. Smash attacks got better in this patch. They finally changed it to where when you switch it to a giant in DP battle, they're no longer doing crazy damage like they used to be able to. Now when you do 5 Russian attacks, you can no longer do a super perception, thank God, because oh my god, that was annoying. Also, while doing 5 rush attacks now, you can no longer do a wow sense if they do a step in, which honestly, that was just so corny that you were even able to do that in the first place, honestly. Also, a Grand Slash. They finally made it to where if you try to go for a second Grand Slash, your character just flies away. The grand/ reset is still there, but now it's a lot more strict than what it used to be, and I am very happy for this. And those are the main ones that I can think of at the moment. But it's really going to show that the developers are actually listening to what everyone is saying, just like how they did with the last patch they did. And this is why it is very important to give games criticism. If the community did not speak up about the issues about this, and if I wasn't introduced to that document with Creeps and the others, and we didn't point out the flaws with this game, none of this would actually happen. The biggest thing that we're really missing to make Sparking Zero a real Tenkaichi game gameplay wise is we need more movement options, because the movement is just heavily nerfed in this game, and I just want to be able to be smooth. That's the main reason I really got into the games, honestly. I also would really love to see perception changed again. I want perception to be to where you have to commit to doing it. Overall, as the game stands right now, whether you played Dragon Ball Sparking Zero before or whether you're new to it, this is honestly the best time to get into the game, especially with the new DLC that recently released. This game is really in a very good place right now, and if they keep updating the game as they are, we are in for a beautiful time.
And I agree with Jay. This game, as it stands right now, it's nowhere near perfect, and we still got ways to go. As it stands right now, I do prefer playing this version of the game as of right now. There's still a lot of issues, such as like the combo tracking issues, and up until now, what I just discovered as I was working on this video, revenge counters gotten buffed so hard to the point where if you throw a super on hits, you can get punished for it. Never in my life of playing fighting games I gotten punished for landing a super on hits. That's crazy work. Next, I want to go over the community of Sparking Zero and the competitive scene. As for the competitive scene, it's non-existent. It does not exist at all. If you look up any type of tournament for Sparking Zero, it's either gonna go to France or TNS, or maybe Q1 or Ultimate Burst tournament. And all those tournaments happen during the early period of the game. And we talking about this year going forward, it is non-existent. A lot of people dropped the game or really just gave up on the community, which, I mean, to be fair, is valid. This community is really toxic. To me, it's really unfortunate to see, because seeing how Tenkaichi 2 and Tenkaichi 3 built such a cool, competitive, and welcoming community if you play casually or competitively, but when you go to Sparking Zero, it's not the same. It's absolute chaos. I think it's weird because, you know, for a game being this big, there should be a lot done with it. Regardless if it's a party game or not, you know, it's cool to host these things, you know, and just build a community up, but it's non-existent. It doesn't last for too long. Most of the bigger creators who were originally talking about the game and had plans to set up big events are no longer there because of the community itself. And I will be completely honest, I think that's very sad and unfortunate to see. No arena fighter or fighting game should have to go through something like this. And for those who are trying to bring this community in a positive light and try to make things work for the game, I absolutely salute you and just hope for the best.
I honestly feel the biggest downfall for this game honestly was the Dragon Ball Sparking Zero community, besides of how the fact the game actually was, honestly. Because, you know, it's a Dragon Ball game. There are going to be people who defend this game till the end of time, saying there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. Or people like me who are actually giving criticism to the game. They say that I was just complaining and such when I actually really wasn't. But to them, they just want to like lace the game to the fullest, which there's nothing wrong with liking the game. But to say the game's had no problems is absolutely insane. And honestly, this community is honestly so split, whether you're someone who likes to play the game casually or if you're someone who likes to play the game competitively. Like, no one actually wants to have a discussion about anything to actually understand from their side. And then you can even go on Twitter and look at Dragon Ball Sparking Zero right now and the threats that they got. There was even a time to where there was a thing on Twitter to where someone said, like, how do y'all actually feel about the game? And like the responses from the quote tweets from that are honestly very divisive. And then there was another one that was a rematch thread to where like, why exactly won't you rematch in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero? And me, the only reason I'm not going to rematch someone is if they have shit connection, which most of the player base are playing on Wi-Fi, so they're going to have bad connection, right? But the responses that I saw from that too, it was just like, this community is just wild, bruh. And then everybody has this weird thing of like, this is how you should play the game mentality, which I'm going to be very honest about, you can't really tell someone how to actually play a game. They're going to play the game how they want to play the game. So whether the gameplay is corny, scummy, etc., they're going to play the game how they want to play it. That's just something I learned over the years of playing anime games, honestly. But again, I'm the type of player to adapt and actually learn what they're doing, and then I'm actually like, okay, so I already know how I'm going to deal with this matchup or whatever. But I honestly feel like that, like, there needs to really be a conversation of just like big creators or like creators in the game in general just all like have a discussion with each other about like what we can actually do to make the game better, like have like actual events for the game that get the community hype and stuff like that. Because the main thing I'm just tired of seeing about this game is just like the game is dead, which people don't really understand the wording of dead. When I think of a game is dead, I think of Gears of War Judgment. If you go on that game right now, that game has like 9 to 10 players on the game. That is what I consider a dead game, to where like if no one's actually playing it, because you could have games from 20 years ago still thriving just because the community very loves that game. The competitive scene, I don't even want to discuss about this. I still remember, Zenos, when you made that tweet on Twitter, talk about the Tampa Never Sleepless event for the first event for the game. And I think it was Android19 who was doing the quick ascend descend thing because they weren't losing key at the time, and everybody's just like, haha, it's a party game. I'm like, haha, this is not DBFC, so I don't know what y'all expected, blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, oh, brother. And even with the online qualifiers for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, it was just, that whole situation was honestly a mess in itself. I felt like with each qualifier that was going on, there was always something going on in the qualifier. And that's why I really respect Globku and Qon for actually trying to like make like the competitive scene actually have something for the game, because they were trying their best. But just overall, especially with the battle hour being canceled after what happened in LA, I honestly think at this point that the competitive scene for this game, for anime wise, is really not going to be there. Especially with Bleach Rebirth of Souls coming out in March, I think that's where a lot of people are going to draw their next attention to, honestly. So overall, I think it's really up to the community now to really host competitive events for the game, and that's if the community chooses to do so. And I feel like a lot of people just look at anime games to where they just kind of dismiss it as saying like the games don't have depth, the games don't have this and that. It is just like, if you actually spent time to actually learn how these games actually operate, you will learn that these games actually have more than looks just to it. Because a lot of people still think that anime games are just button mashers, and it's kind of just like, whatever, man. I honestly feel like at this point, whether you're a casual or a competitive player, you should honestly just stick with people who have the same mindset as you and just play games with them or just talk with them on a regular basis. Because with this community in particular, I feel like there's really no point in trying to discuss anything competitive with them. And hell, even talking to BT2 and BT3 veterans, that's why a lot of people that I know don't even want to talk in this community for real.
Next, let's go ahead and go over the content of Sparking Zero, starting with the mode that has a lot of mixed emotions. That is the episode mode. The thing that makes the episode mode or the story mode of this game so different from the other Tenkaichi games is that the what if scenarios are incorporated within the canon Dragon Ball storylines, specifically Z and Dragon Ball Super. And yes, you heard that right. Y'all know Z movies, GT, or even OG Dragon Ball story related events that are in the story mode. That could be a bummer for some people, I understand. The biggest difference with Sparking Zero is that they split the story into different character perspectives this time around. You can play with Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, Future Trunks, Frieza, Goku Black, and Jiren. You essentially have to go through different playthroughs with different characters. And I'm a little bit mixed about this change, mostly because the scenarios in the what if stories vary from quality to quality. Goku, Goku Black, and Future Trunks, to me at least, have the more interesting stories within the what if saga. Now, there are some characters, I will admit, like mainly Piccolo and Vegeta's routes, that I find them a little bit forgettable. Now, how you obtain these what if routes can range from a different amount of things. You mainly have to beat a side objective. It mostly just ranges from you just literally just beating the opponent as fast as possible or do a very specific thing within the story mode. You know, it's cool. It does give you that replay value of wanting to go the different routes that the game offers. Now, one complaint I have seen a lot of people talk about Within the story mode is the presentation, since the cutscenes range from dynamic freeze frame pan slideshows or in-game cutscenes that range from either to be fairly decent or just kind of bland. And I'm going to be very frank about the story mode and the presentation for a lot of Tenkaichi games. I think they always been mediocre. Most of the cutscenes in the majority of the games either range from a character having the most blank and lifeless facial expression whenever the most crucial event happens within the cutscene, rather it be just a dialogue box in the bottom, or having the camera zoom in and out in between transitions and then it just goes straight to the fight. I don't know what people necessarily expect, because the Dragon Ball games, or at least from the Tenkaichi standpoint, never really told the story that well to begin with. Really kind of just in there just for the padding and the fights most of the time, and maybe the RPG elements here and there. But when you do get those cutscenes with a bit more love and animation, which isn't really too common, similar to how it is in the other Tenkaichi games, they are okay for the most part. And one thing I will say that this game has above the older Tenkaichi games, at least they show their facial expressions whenever they in some form of pain or action is happening. You never get that in the older games, and I feel like that's something a lot of people just either miss or don't really talk about that much. Next, we got Custom Battle, which is the mode that replaces the Ultimate Battle mode from the Tenkaichi games, where you are able to play custom battles, which range from either user custom battles or the preset custom battles they have in the game. And you can even make your own little what-if scenarios and essentially create your own Dragon Ball fights, which I think was pretty cool. And I never really seen that done in a Dragon Ball game, or really an anime game in general. But I will say and admit this, the process of making these battles is convoluted as hell. And I kind of wish the organization was a little better. It may not be for me, but I definitely find it to be tedious. However, I do enjoy playing a lot of the custom battles, because there are some that are kind of but there are some that are really good and give you a fair challenge, which I do enjoy. Next, we have Legendary Warrior Face Off. Yes, that is the name of the mode. I don't know why they called it. They could have had a way better name, but I digress. This is essentially a limited time mode that released during the January patch, and this mode is pretty much your boss rush or your time attack mode, where you challenge a boss character. And you have, as of right now, 4 different difficulties. And depending on what characters you use for that legendary battle, you get additional bonus points. Now, the higher the difficulty goes, the more damage, health, and defensive properties that the boss will get. Now, there are limited special missions or essentially awards that you can get that come with either Zenny, some Dragon Balls, ability capsules, or even borders for your player card. So there is a reward that you get out of it. Now, tournaments make a return with a more bland UI, but we do have 2 additional new tournaments that they added to the game. We have the Tournament of Destroyers, and then we have the Tournament of Power. The Tournament of Destroyers has a bigger focus on team battles, with the restriction of you not being able to swap characters mid-match. And for the Tournament of Power, you're essentially doing team battles, but you're not able to fly, and you are able to be ringed out, which is a cool addition. And the fun thing about this aspect is that you are able to play online with your homies in the tournaments, and you can adjust the settings to whatever you like. And I'll admit, the aspect is cool. Definitely had a good time with this mode, though I don't really play it as much post-release. Next, let's go over offline and online battles. Now, fun fact, this game wasn't going to have local play on release. Yeah, that is insane for a Tenkaichi game to not have local play. And we literally had to beg for this mode to come back, and they eventually added. However, with the exchange of only having Hyperbolic Time Chamber being the only playable stage due to it not being as busy and as destructive as the other stages in the game. In the later update, they made all the stages playable in the split screen mode. Now, there are some weird omissions that they did in the battle mode. You can still play singles, teams, and DP battles, or even custom battles if you really wanted to, and you can even adjust the rules and conditions in battle, just like you did in previous games. But for some odd reason, there is no announcer. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but like whenever you start a fight, there's no ready, set, start. You don't have time to prepare yourself. It's just boom. You get the intros, you get straight to the fight. There's no ready, set, start. You know, like it was that is such a weird change. I don't know why they did that, but I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I just thought that was odd. And the character select in this game on release was some hot garbage. They did not have a drop down menu for transformations, so the entire character select screen just looked cluttered. Who told them this was a good idea? Why are we falling back? Now, luckily, as the updates went on, they eventually added filters and a view to where you can click on your character and they show the drop down menu. There's even an option now where they show you the character's moveset and what they have in the bottom right of the screen, which I think is a very nice and fine detail. You can even hit the options button and view the character's moveset and see what they have to offer. Great quality of life change. Next, we have online battles. And fun fact, this game doesn't have quick matches. Not at the start of it, at least. They updated later to now we have quick matches, but you had room matches. You had spectate lobbies, which was good because most anime arena fighters don't even bother adding that sometimes, which I would give Spark a pat on the back for. But there was no quick matches with casual matches. Why? And ranked, oh boy, let me tell you about ranked right quick. Now, I'm cool with rank in my fighting games. I think it's cool. But the netcode in this game is absolute dog water. When I tell you there are only 2 playable stages in this damn game, especially if you play on PC. If you're not choosing the Cell games or Hyperbolic Time Shaper, you are gonna have a bad time, especially someone that either has a really bad connection, either via console or just have a bad PC on Steam. They're both garbage experiences. And it's also delay-based netcode. And there's no crossplay. You know, maybe it's best that we don't have crossplay because this game can barely function when there's 2 people on the screen in a busy ass map. That was the saving grace. But boy, I tell you, there were so many issues with online in this game. People would rage quit and disconnect, and you will not get points for it. They changed that now with the updates, and thank God they did that, but it made rank so pointless. On top of that, the way the rank system in this game works, it is not rewarding, it is not satisfying. For some reason, rank, even though there are character ranks in this game, the game doesn't go by it. It might as well just not exist, because at the end of the day, people are just gonna look at your overall rank rather than your character rank. I think it's freaking stupid. Why would you have 2 different rank systems? It's all over the place. Now, you do have singles and DP battles to, you know, split the different types of modes you want to go through within the ranking system, but there's overall no satisfaction or reward of playing ranked. It's not even a regression system. If you stay at Z rank for too long and you don't play rank matches, there's no reset. Once you're there, you're there. You got the title, you move on, and this leads to people who have the Z rank that play like absolute shit. You got some people who are Z ranked, they are really good. You know, you can still fight strong players through chatting with the people that's up in the leaderboard or finding discords or hitting people up who are at that level to play those high level games, but there's really no point in playing ranked, and it's kind of whack. Next, I want to talk about the super training mode that the game offers. And when I tell you, this is probably the biggest aspect that I like about the game the most. This alone is probably the best training mode and tutorial mode that we had in the Sparking series yet. In terms of tutorial, they teach you a good amount of things about the game. Now, at a very base level, of course, but they give you the demonstrations, they give you examples, they even give you tactics how to go through certain matchups, and that is something that I always appreciate about the Tenkaichi series. But with Sparking, they just went further and give you the explanation. They give you the actual demos for most of the basic features of the game and the system mechanics, and that is something that I very appreciate because not a lot of arena fighters, again, have these type of tutorials, and that's something I will always praise the Tenkaichi series for. And even with the training mode, they even went further with that. So now you can choose what strategies that you want the CPU to have when you're in the training mode. Now, sadly, there's no record and playback function, which we haven't got that with arena fighters yet. I know It's tragic. I would hope in the future they'll add something like that, but you are able to test if your combos are real or not, and you can practice your defensive mechanics and polish them up. And you know, that's something that I do appreciate, because that is something that you couldn't do in previous Tenkaichi games. Next, I want to go over the progression system of Sparking Zero, which I do really like. You know, in older Dragon Ball games, you will have to unlock characters through the story mode, which is still a thing in this game, but however, there are multiple ways on unlocking characters. You can either buy them through the shop, either through playing online or playing through the custom battles or through story mode. Hell, I unlocked all the characters just by playing the game through online, and that's how I was able to really get all the characters that I wanted for the game, because there is now a player level system, and once you go from level 1 to level 20, you are able to access more items within the shop. It gives the user more access to how they want to play the game. Either for those who just simply want to play the offline content, they can unlock the characters like that. But some people who are just online onlys and just want to hit the lab, and you can still are able to unlock characters through money. It may take a little longer, but it's definitely possible to do. You can also gain unlockables via Zeno's orders or the Wii stamp book, which are fairly easy to get. Like, I'm gonna be honest, you can really get most of these objectives and rewards just by playing the game naturally. And then you have the Wii stamp book, which is a bit more specific on how you get rewards, mostly through via Easter eggs, like going through special dialogues or getting dynamic finishes with certain characters. And of course, it would not be a Dragon Ball game without you being able to summon Shenron. You know, there are 3 ways of summoning Shenron in this game this time around. You can either summon Shenron, Porunga, or Super Shenron. And they all have their different tasks and things to do in order for you to get those Dragon Balls. And they're fairly easy to get. Now, the Super Dragon Balls, they're a little bit on the challenging side, but it's not super difficult at all. And with these wishes, you are able to unlock characters, costumes, Zenny, or even more player XP, or even titles, or even unlockables to where you can bypass certain what if routes in the episode mode. Now, in terms of the customization, you are able to adjust characters' capsule abilities and presets if you want specific builds for your character. And you also have outfits, and you do have accessories, but they are very limiting for the most of the cast of characters, and I feel like that is something they definitely need to work on in the future, because I honestly thought the customization would be a lot better in terms of the accessory options that you can equip on your character. But you know, maybe that's just me. And you are also able to customize your player card, your titles, and your badges. Lastly, I want to look at the gallery mode. You do have the option to view your local and online replays, listen to the music of the game, and even look at the opening and ending cinematics for the game. But for some odd reason, you cannot look at the cutscenes from the episode mode. Maybe there's something they'll add as an update. But they do have the encyclopedia mode, which is the Dragon history mode in the older Tenkaichi games. But this time around, you have voice commentary from both Videl, Chi-Chi, and Bulma. And it's still as enjoyable and charming as it is in the older games. So yeah, as you can see, my opinion for this game is very mixed. On one hand, I think it is a great Dragon Ball game, and it really does simulate the feel of being a Dragon Ball character, along with having really good visuals. However, the core gameplay in the content of the game feels like a massive downgrade compared to Tenkaichi 3. I probably won't be as harsh about it if the advertisements didn't say, hey, this is a sequel to Tenkaichi 3. This feels more like a reboot than a sequel. By the end of the day, they should have pushed that instead of it being a sequel, because I feel like less people will be more upset when the game released in the state that it was in. Now, despite how I may feel, I do want to be optimistic. I think from a year from now, this game is going to be in a much better state. It seems like for once, Spike Chunsoft, as much as I despise their company, are making changes to improve the game. Honestly, this is probably the most responsive I've seen Spike Chun become over the years of me playing their games in the past. And I hope within a few months to even a year, this game and this community will be at a much better state than what it was prior. So with that said, my name is Zenos, and I would just like to say thank you all for watching this video. It definitely took a while, and this is probably one of the biggest videos that I ever made throughout my entire YouTube career, and I'm very thankful for those who have watched this video along with getting to know the Tenkaichi and Sparking community, both its casual and competitive audience. It was a real joy, and I'm glad I got the chance to cover this series.